First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me all the way from the Southern Hemisphere. I think I was going to say I'm the only one from the Southern Hemisphere, and then I remembered I had in my bag a lot of other little people, so I'm not the only one from the Southern Hemisphere. A little bit about me. I run a tutoring centre, and I have 45 staff, and we tutor about 220 kids every term. But I also have a different life. I also teach in a high school. I teach business studies, economics and legal studies as well. So I'm a teacher. And then, because I like to be busy, I lecture at university. So I train teachers who have been business people and lawyers. I retrain them at 2 universities to become teachers, high school teachers. And then, to have the full experience of education, I'm also a student as well. So I'm studying a law degree, and I can relate to exams and stress and pressure like all my students can in different forums. One of the other hats I wear, apart from my life running the Extension Centre, is this spacebar. Here we go. Okay, so one of the other hats I wear, I run this centre, and we take kids and we tutor them, and we run Saturday classes, and we run after-hours classes. And that's a little bit about the business that I run. But about tutoring in Australia. About 10 years ago, there was a lot of controversy in Australia about the whole area of tuition. What had happened was 2 things. A private business had teachers teaching in a school, stealing exams, and then giving them to the students and preparing them before external tests. Pretty controversial sort of thing. And a second thing happened as well. Another private business teaching little children how to get from one school into another. So in Australia, there's lots of barriers. And for this little child to get from a public school into a private school, there's a test, a very hard exam. Or for this little child to get from a normal everyday school into what we call an academically selective school, there's a barrier, there's a test. But one particular business found a way around the barrier. What this business did was it said to the children, "You're all very bright. We want you each to memorize one question from the test. When the test is finished, we will rewrite the paper for the next year." So, these types of controversies led the government to come to us and say, "What's happening? Why are private businesses engaged in these sort of practices? Where is the accountability?" Now, my own experience dovetailed into this. About 14 years ago, a little girl who was from Russian background living in Australia asked me to tutor her. And I spent 2 hours with her teaching her physics, because I was trained in physics and also commerce, in sciences and commerce. And at the end of the 2 hours, she started crying. I said, "Was my tutoring that bad?" And she said, "My parents are very poor. My parents were both academics in Russia. They've come to Australia. Their degrees aren't recognised. They work in a factory. In the last 2 hours, I've learnt more than from the $3,000 my parents have spent on tutoring all year." So this made me very sad. So I thought I need to research this industry, find out more about it. So I made a number of phone calls, and I thought, I'm going to be 3 different people. I'm very good at being different people, as you've seen. So I thought, I'm going to call, pretending to be a parent, all of these businesses. What do you offer? What are the qualifications of your staff? How much does it cost? Then I thought, I'm going to call as a prospective tutor. How do you interview me? What's the background check? how much will I be paid? Interestingly, it was very easy to be a tutor. No qualifications and experience. I didn't even need to turn up face-to-face for an interview. Yay. And then thirdly, I thought, I'm going to call as a student, asking questions about tutoring. And on every level, it was very, very disconcerting, very upsetting what these tutoring businesses were doing. So we had problems that were publicised, and we had my personal experience. Not knowing what to do, we have, you've got the ISO, International Standards Organisation. Australia are very progressive when it comes to standards. We're very important in that UN body, and the ISO, and in that process. So I wrote to them and I said, I think we need a national standard on tutoring. We need tutoring to be accountable. Well, they said, yes, we'll do a survey, let's find out if we need a standard. So they wrote to all the businesses in Australia who run tutoring and said, would you like to be party to this? For 3 years, we sat in a room trying to come up with a national standard. And for the first time, I sat face to face with business. And boy, do business not want to be accountable? It was very interesting, that process. So at the end of 3 years, we still couldn't even settle on a definition for what's a tutor. We still couldn't settle on a definition for what does the word qualification mean. Does it mean university education? Does it mean I've sat with a tutor for 10 hours? What does it mean? We couldn't agree on what truth in advertising means. What does it mean to tell the truth when you advertise? Interesting snapshot of business. So, when the government said there are these problems, what will you do? We decided to set up a body called the Australian Tutoring Association. Now, the Australian Tutoring Association is a self-regulation body. We wrote a code of conduct, and we said all of our members must abide by this code of conduct. And like Kabir's NTA, initially we were an association that was not for profit. But interestingly, like Europe, where you have lots of different states, all with different laws, in Australia we have 6 different provinces, all with different laws, and we have 2 territories with a different law, and we have an overarching federal government with different laws again. And then we've got local government with different laws. So we thought, goodness me, we've set up in one state, and in this state we can have a code of conduct that applies, but what if someone is in Victoria, or in Queensland, or in the ACT, or in the Northern Territory, or somewhere else? We need to change our structure. The other thing we found was we couldn't pay people because all of the work was voluntary. And guess who did all the work? So that was a bit of a problem. And we also found that the laws are all different so we need a unified set of laws. So we changed from being an association to a not-for-profit company. And that company allowed us to employ staff. And we got away with voting and all that sort of stuff. We could appoint permanent directors, and we started to run it in a lot more professional manner. Now, in the last nearly 6 years, we have 367 business members from all around the country. We also have 2 businesses in Singapore that have joined. We have a Canadian company that have joined, and we've got businesses in Vietnam that want to join as well. In that 6 years, we probably have about 6,000 tutors that we look after through all these companies. And we estimate around 200,000 students in Australia are subject to the code of conduct binding our members. But there are about 2.4 million students in Australia that have tutoring. So it's only about 10% that we self-regulate. We also set up a tutoring association in New Zealand, so they have their own. Now, there's something you need to know about the difficulties we face. It'll be similar to the difficulties that you may face forming a regional body for Europe. One of the difficulties we face is a political issue. If I'm in business, I'm capitalist. If I'm capitalist, I want to reduce cost and I want to make profit. Laws are compliance. I don't really want to have to abide by law, so I'm going to minimum comply. But education is socialist. Education is about equity and access and inclusion. Education and commerce seem to be a bit opposite. We can't really reduce costs and emphasize profit if we're trying to teach children. So, how many people here tutor? Do you all tutor? Are you all involved in tutoring? Yeah? Great. How many of you want to be unemployed? Have no job? None? All of us should want to be unemployed. All of us should want to have our students so independent that we don't have a job. Then our businesses will grow. That means having cost. It means putting the child first. It means saying, how can I make myself redundant? If I have that attitude to students, they're going to be the best students they can be. I'll have a line outside my door so long because parents will want me to tutor their children because they know I'm not putting my commercial interest first, I'm putting the child's interest first. I'm not creating dependencies, I'm creating independence. When we write a report, if any of my tutors says, I will see you next term, we change the report. Why will you see this child next term? Why does a child have to see you again? Your report should make that child as independent as possible, whether they have you or not. So when I train my teachers and when I train my students, I say, everyone wants a job, but aim to be unemployed. Make yourself redundant. Now, there are a number of challenges that we face. One thing we found in Australia, and I'm not going to go through my paper in full because time is short, and I respect that you have been sitting for a long time, and on a flight from Australia to Dubai, I know what it's like sitting for a long time. So I'll just leave you with this. We found in Australia that a lot of the education writers were teachers. So they'd been teaching, then they left teaching, they become journalists and they write. Boy, do they hate tutors. A journalist who's a teacher does not like a tutor. Why would I like a tutor? A tutor is taking away from teaching. Really? How many teachers have their children being tutored? Quite a lot. How many teachers tutor after hours but don't declare the income? They hide the income. So it seems to me teachers wear a bit of a double mask. Don't have tutoring, but my own children will be tutored. Don't have tutoring, but I'm going to be a tutor, but you won't see me because I won't declare my income. So what we thought was, hey, this isn't very good. Why are the journalists always down on tutors? Let's turn this around. We have enough negative press. If you have a look at the Australian Tutoring Association news, do a Google search, you will find this year we've had nearly 30 major press articles in different newspapers. The initial 5 or 6 were negative, and then we thought, okay, who's shaping the agenda about tutoring in Australia? Nobody knows what they're talking about. Nobody knows if it adds value. Nobody knows why parents are doing it. Nobody knows anything, but the journalists are negative, the politicians are negative, the unions are negative, the teachers are negative, but parents want more and more and more. Somehow it's positive. So we thought, okay, let's find out what parents want. So we set up a national survey. We believe it's the first survey in the world, but it's certainly the first in Australia. We went straight to the parents and said, tell us about tutoring. Why do you do it? How much does it cost? What subjects do you like? What benefits are there? What are the negative things, etc., 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 etc. That alone has made us step forward because we say we're a responsible industry. We want to work directly with parents. We want to know what they want to know. We want to help their children better. We want to shape what's done. All around the world we know this is growing. All around the world we know governments are wrestling what to do. Do we include it? Do we not include it? How do we shape it? It's a struggle. Are we undermining public education by saying tutoring exists? Does opening our eyes hurt that much if we acknowledge that it's there? So we thought, let's find out. Now, what the ATA offers to UNESCO, in whatever form it comes in, is we're very happy to feed you